So, Adam, what do you think?
That's truly one of the worst films I've ever seen.
Really?
That is abysmal.
Abysmal?
Abysmal.
It wasn't that bad.
Absolutely dreadful.
It wasn't.
Shocking. Why the fuck is it called Wang and fucking Fi? What's that? What? When were the Fi and the Wings in the film?
It's the name of a restaurant, no?
No, that's a saying.
Is it?
Yeah.
In France?
Yeah.
What does it mean?
Well, you have the choice to get either the wing or the other bits.
Right.
So you get either l'aile, either the wing, or la cuisse, the thigh.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay.
That's also a pun kind of
Okay, fair enough.
reference.
I just don't. It's just. There were so many things wrong with that film.
Do you think you need to see it again?
Absolutely not.
In a world divided by good, bad, and just plain standard movies, one film must stand alone. You hated The Room. You despised Troll 2. You loved Alien and adored The 400 Blows. This summer comes a new milestone in the "what the fuck did I just watch" category. The wing or the thigh. Beware. Parts of the opening credits of this film may induce seizures. Mono mineral, mono mineral. Hello, everyone.
Hi. Hi.
We have a guest today. Who are you and what are you doing here?
Well, doing here, you let me in, but well, I'm Cecile, so I went to ACS 2 years after you guys. I met you, Yann, quite randomly. Well, not randomly at all, but to me it was very random. You knew exactly what you were doing. During the Fringe last year, you came to see the show we were doing with ACS, and then I found you in a park, and I went to talk to you because I just thought you were a regular audience member, and then you just told me you went to ACS. I felt like an idiot, but then on top of it, you were French, and I'm French too, so that was a nice coincidence. I loved it. And I would like to apologize to Adam for not choosing the 500 blows. I hope you're not too disappointed.
Oh, it was funny because we just recorded yesterday. I was like, oh yeah, we're doing 400 blows.
I heard
and
that.
Yann's like, no, we're not. I'm like, what? I'm like, oh, great, okay. Well, we'll see what this is. Yeah, this was an experience then. It was more funny because I'm like, am I going to judge this for not being the 400 blows? Which I think I did, so...
Which would be, very, very different
I know,
ambience.
yeah, totally.
So we were yesterday morning. Adam and Anouk here were L'aile ou la cuisse virgins. Now they've seen it. I've recorded the session. It will not be released, but Adam, would you like Adam to do a plot summary?
I would love Adam to do a plot summary.
And then I'll ask Cecile to correct or to give her...
I tell you what, yeah, I'll go through that, whatever that was last night, and if I can find anything that's worth going out, I'll put it out at some point. Maybe it'll come out for episode 100 as a part special thing.
Oh,
what is this movie about? Some bloke who writes reviews for all these French restaurants, like the Michelin star thing, puts out a book every year, and he's got to review all the restaurants. But, oh no, his son doesn't want to be a restaurant reviewer. He wants to be an actor, he wants to be a clown. But then out of left field, a man who makes TV dinners or truck stop dinners wants to steal the book so he knows where all the bad restaurants are so he can buy the restaurants and make more money. And then, for some reason, the restaurant critic feels that he has to stop this plan. Am I far off?
You're not too far off. I think you have the major elements. I think the only bit that would be missing is that actually the mean industrial guy wants to buy the good restaurants so he can turn them into crap.
Oh, right.
And that's why the critic wants to save them, because the cuisine française is being bought by people who make industrial food.
Right, okay.
But apart from that, I think everything's there.
Right, okay.
I can hear the enthusiasm
Oh,
that
yeah.
you had.
Anyone wants the Wikipedia version too, so we are clear. Charles Duchemin is the editor of an internationally known restaurant guide. After being appointed to the Académie Française, Duchemin decides to retire as a restaurant critic and trains his son Gérard to continue the family business. However, Gérard Duchemin is more interested in his true passion, circus, than high cuisine. Soon, however, Charles's plans to retire are complicated by the arrival of Jacques Tricatel, the owner of a company of mass-produced food. Fearing for the future of high cuisine, Charles and his son strive to ruin Tricatel's company in any way they can. This movie is an allegory of the antagonism between USA culture and French culture as it was seen by French people in the 70s.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah. When Yann asked me to choose a French film, I went for that. I mean, I studied cinema in France at university for 3 years, and we talk a lot about avant-garde and all of those Godard and all of those very massive artists that we call them artists in French. Even they're not directors anymore; they're artists, and this has nothing to do with that. This is I chose that film because Louis de Funès, who is the main actor who plays the critique, who Yann's shirt on right now, is, I would say, to me and to a lot of French people, one of maybe the biggest comedian we've ever had. He was impossibly famous, and all of his movies were massive box office successes. Everyone would go to see him. So I think, to me, that influenced a lot why I wanted to be an actress and what type of actress I wanted to be. And I thought it was a really interesting side of the French cinema to discover, because it's not really spoken about outside of France, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I was watching this and I was interested to ask if you think this is kind of a French culturally loved film, and if maybe there are there isn't a bridge between, and then maybe the anger coming from Adam and so I enjoyed it, but I found it very confusing at times. And I remember Adam was like, what was that about? And I kind of jabbered on for ages, and I realized that I didn't really have like a synopsis in my head like immediately.
Yeah.
And usually a film that I liked, I'd be really happy to talk about immediately. But then Yann was talking about how it had these two messages, and it was more about the experience of a film rather than wanting to immediately analyze it and be like, what made this a good film, rather than you just sitting back and being like, I enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. Why is that not enough?
I see what you mean. I watched it yesterday again. It had been a long time since I'd seen it, and I realized that the plot it never stops. There's always something new happening, and it's more like a series of little sketches going together it's a series of events, basically. So I wouldn't say there's a traditional plot. I would say, however, that yes, it might be very French in the sense that it's very well known and loved in France still today. It's one of the big ones, but it might be a French side, a side of French humor that doesn't translate very well. I was watching it yesterday. I was like, yeah, it's all in the face, and it's jokes. It's jokes of not being up to standards with things. It might be a humor that's not very well. That doesn't translate much, and maybe that's why that movie didn't actually export anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Is this his most well-known performance? Because in Britain we have a series called Carry On, which is essentially, there was about, I don't know how many there were, but they went on from like the 60s to the end of the 80s, and there's loads, and people remember specific ones. So I'm curious, because you and Yann agree that this is a great French comedic performer. Is this the one that's most well known, or is this the one that's well known because it had two of the actors together?
I wouldn't say it's his most well known. I was going through his biography yesterday, and I thought that was one of his first, but actually it's one of his last, and it's in 1976. He dies in 1983. So he's starting to be quite ill at that point in his career, and it's kind of his character is very well formed from like maybe 20 other movies. I mean, he's done 120 movies. I think it's a lot, but with him as that character, which is him really, there's been already 20 solid, massive successes that people still remember today. So no, I wouldn't say that's his most famous. I think it's very interesting because of the actor who plays his son, who also was one of our most famous comedians, well, stand-up comedians, more Coluche is one of the other pillars of French humor, I would say. So that I think it's a really interesting movie to have the both of them in, but it's not his biggest one. What would you say, Yann, is his biggest one?
I loved La Zizanie. I don't know, but there was a series, I don't know how popular it was, about gendarme. So basically it was in Saint-Tropez, and you've got this little gendarmerie there, and this group of not policemen, but well, gendarmes. And they had those weird adventures. That was massively popular. And there were 7 or 8 of those movies, including the gendarme versus the the ETs. Like, they were aliens. Well, there were some weird stuff in there. But the ones I love and I remember a lot are so La Cuisse, this one, and La Zizanie.
Okay, yeah. So so he has maybe 2 massive series of film, The Gendarme, which is about, well, not policemen, but military policemen in the south of France. And he also had a series that was called Fantomas, and he was trying to catch a thief. Was he a policeman again in that, actually?
Or a PI or some high-ranked
exactly.
Police officer. Yeah, trying to catch a guy with a mask.
Exactly. Yeah, it was a really. I mean, and to be fair, it's an actor that played that role, the one you saw yesterday in that film. Oh, I mean, you saw in that film. That's just who he plays all the time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was probably, but actually not that much. A bit less energetic in this one, because he was just out of a double stroke, heart attack, and he had a medicalized trailer on set.
Yeah, and I read yesterday that only half the film was covered by insurance because they refused to cover it because it was too risky to have
just in case.
Yeah, that's mental.
There's a case of when they're making The Hobbit, they couldn't get Christopher Lee to New Zealand to shoot the scenes because he's so old. The insurance couldn't cover it. Oof. So they had to come over. Peter Jackson, it might have been Andy Serkis, actually, it might have been the second unit, had to come over to like Pinewood and green screen. So every bit of performance from The Hobbit with Christopher Lee is green screened. He's not with any other actor.
That's interesting.
Unless, I don't know, Ian McKellen was there for that day of shooting in Pinewood. But if it's not, it's like tennis balls on a stick acting for Christopher Lee, because he was in 90 odd when making it. He died quite soon after The Hobbits came out. So.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's what what's his name? Louis de Funès. That's a great t-shirt. It killed him in the end, right? Like, he had a heart condition, so it kind of so it must have been really bad. And I mean, they say even on Wikipedia they talk about how even in this film, he was much less than he usually is. And so he's usually much bigger. For research purposes, I probably should have watched a lot more of their films, but I would be interested to see more and see if maybe the humor then translates more.
Perhaps you get used to it in a way, you start expecting it. I mean, does it translate in any way? Because the French is quite specific in those movies. It's we're 40 years back, so it's a different kind of French. It's even for us, sometimes it's a bit estranged. But does the physicality work in any way, or is that really a cultural thing?
Yes and no. I think it just depends on the joke. I mean, obviously you see moments of like Benny Hill-esque, we're in the hospital chasing around, people falling over like orderlies and stuff like that. I mean, yes.
And Carry On was like that. Like, it's big, it's like melodramatic almost.
It'd be interesting because I don't think Yann would get most of Carry On because it's a lot of innuendo. So it would be a lot of based how much of the English language you know as well, because that was a cheap laugh.
I'm starting to get them if I'm focused.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
we'll get
yeah.
there.
It's just that I don't necessarily find them funny,
No, of course. Yeah.
but I get
Yeah.
them. So Louis de Funès was a force of nature. There was. Have you ever heard of a guy? I think I talked about him on the podcast a few times. Gaëtan Blum. So there is, in those years, the 70s, 80s, and there were a bunch of movies that became cult, but who could be qualified today and even probably at the time as nanar, like cheesy. And we had something called Les Soudoués. So basically, there was a guy in there who was playing with cards and being silly and doing stuff. And he's a friend. He actually started as a magician. It's a random chance that he ended up in that movie. And the guy is like what I define a true artist. He can't really understand old tax stuff, everything that is not related to his art. So like he had, I think, he has like pacemaker, and sometimes it unplugs. So the doctor is like, well, you probably have to like slows things down. Yeah, no worries. And then it redoubles on the. It's just like an electric battery on stage is just incredible.
I thought to have a little interlude, I thought we'd play a game I came up with because I was inspired by the start of this movie. So, the very opening shot of this film, after the whole credity stuff's happened, is a shot to establish that we're in Paris, which obviously is the Eiffel Tower.
Of course.
So, I'm going to say a city, and I want you to say what you would use as the establishing shot.
Cool.
All right? We'll start easy. We'll go like New York.
The bridge.
Yeah, Manhattan, like over Manhattan, Skyview, something.
I've never been. That's one of the parts I've never been, so I'm not sure it's there. Where there is the big sign with the Coca-Cola thing. Is that there?
You mean like in
Times? No.
It's the
like
whole of Times Square.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Times
with
Square,
when they display stuff.
I'd also
Yeah.
accept Empire
Yeah,
State
inside the
Building, Central Park,
Yeah.
Brooklyn Bridge, Statue of Liberty. Right.
Statue of
Statue of
Liberty
Liberty.
is a good one.
What about Rome?
Coliseum. Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the easiest one for Rome.
Australia in general, what would you use?
Kangaroo.
Yeah.
Kangaroo?
Probably nature, kangaroo, cactuses.
It's not called like that anymore because they use the Aboriginal name, but Ayers Rock.
Yeah, I think it's like Urdu or something like that. It's like URD something. Or Sydney Opera House usually they use.
Oh, right.
You know, you throw that on.
Sydney, yeah.
Of course, yeah.
How about Glasgow?
Glasgow, probably Clyde. The shipping towers that you use for building the boats, probably.
Hydro.
Well,
Or the hydro,
With
yeah.
the kind of
With the lights as well.
multicoloured LED thing.
Edinburgh.
Edinburgh, you build castle. Well, even Train Spotting starts on Princess Street with the castle in the background.
Scott Monument, which is where we actually met.
Yeah.
Just
exactly. Just
Oh.
There's a military woman that coming. Oh, I've seen her before. Oh, hello.
Yeah, I was in costume. I was in full Russian Red Army costume to go
brilliant.
eat my lunch in the park, as one does.
Actors kind of, at some point, they're like,
Well, Edinburgh does that as well during the Fringe.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody cares anymore. But opposite question. I get that. Yeah, I laugh anytime I see an opening shot of Paris with the Eiffel Tower. What would you do to symbolize that quickly that you're in Paris without the Eiffel Tower then?
Or the roofs of the buildings, because it's so, these like sort of curved roofs are so Parisian in my eyes. But then I'm looking at like through architecture.
A guy with a beret and a baguette.
Yeah.
With onions.
Well, that happens in Taken, right?
onions.
There's like they get off the train after coming into Paris and Taken, and there's like a guy cycling with all of that on in the shot. I'm like, really?
it's like, when does that become racist? I'm not sure the line.
Well, then again, sometimes we actually do that, so,
There's also the Arc de Triomphe you would probably use as well. Because it's either that or a shot of
people in a cafe.
people in a cafe,
Parisian cafes.
Yeah,
That's true.
the Louvre maybe, with the little pyramid.
The pyramid.
Yeah.
A few things that I realized actually thanks to the subtitles. The play on words with the name of the guy. Du chemin is like kind of from the road. Du chemin. Yeah. Well, actually, there was when Tricatel is about to tell the father du chemin that his son is doing circus thing is something like for a guy from the road, and there is a kind of a joke that I never got until I realized because of the subtitles. You know, with like du chemin and between brackets from the something.
That is funny, yeah, to see that. You can. There's so many levels of play on words in that film that's also probably a translation problem. Has it been dubbed in any way or no?
It is, yeah.
It is dubbed?
Yeah, it is. On the Blu-ray, there are both versions, but we're doing our best to have, obviously, the original version.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
The trouble was to find subtitles. Like Romane Conti, because it's not done professionally, the subtitles. I've not done them, but they were there. Was translated into Romunas Countess or something. I was like, yeah, right.
Yeah, fair enough.
There was a one time Yann was like, wait, I just have to say that is wrong. The subtitles are wrong there.
Yeah, that's
Wasn't there a smiley face at some point? There was a smiley emoji. Like, wait a minute, what?
when they talk about the guy for the first time during the opening stuff with a narration.
That's amazing.
That's one of the sad things about subtitles. Like, you don't actually know how good they are and if they actually capture what they're saying. And there's also like a cultural, historical, and maybe even something that like a French person would immediately understand. Like the name of the film, there's definitely a connection that French people would understand, but then as an English person, that would be British person.
Yeah. So as soon as we ended this, Adam was like, why the hell the wing and the thigh? What?
I was like, wait, just have a leg.
No,
what do you want a wing or a thigh for?
No, it's
what choice is a wing or a thigh? If somebody goes to me, do you want the wings or the thigh? I'm like,
well,
the thigh, obviously, because if it's just one chicken, it's two wings.
But I prefer wings.
I know, so do I, but...
No, but it's the Sunday question every Sunday when your mom has made a chicken and you are one of the lucky ones who gets to choose first. Do you want a wing or a thigh? And that's always the question.
Right.
And so, yeah, I hate that translation in English as well, because I hear it doesn't work. I hear it just doesn't translate to... But what I love about this movie is the amount of food there is in, I mean, the colors, the different textures, how you can be disgusted, and you know how some food looks good. This whole scene where he's tasting yogurts for kids, I had forgotten how colorful and absurd those yogurts are. I just love all the visuals, the colors. I feel like, I don't know if it has inspired other directors afterwards. I was watching it yesterday, and there's this sequence where they're fleeing the factory in a red truck, and they're being chased by the police in their grey truck, and everything is color-coded in the street, and they bump into each other, and it looks exactly like a sequence that Wes Anderson would have directed for Grand Budapest Hotel if he wanted to. And I was like, this is so funny that in that movie that to me is just plain popular humor, there's actually a lot of color work and texture work.
Yeah, the scene, I think it's the first scene when he's dressed up as a woman and they've well, actually it turns out that he also works for Duchemin, but they're basically thinking that this is the guy and it's not, and all this stuff, and they bring out all these different foods, and like that color sequence is incredible. And also just the fact it's probably sort of making fun a little bit about how French haute cuisine, it can be really over the top, and like they love their kind of showing, you know, it's like a play almost.
We'll need to ask about inspirations. That the person that we're going to ask when he comes, if he comes, about, there is a scene in here. So every time you see him in a uniform, that's the Académie Française one, right? And the guy who's doing the the tailleur, is at one, he's like trying to do his work, and the Louis de Funès is like walking away, and we have that kind of same joke or situational thing in Anna and the Apocalypse.
Oh
Really?
yeah,
Have you seen that?
I haven't seen it yet. I need to see it. I keep hearing about it all the time. It sounds amazing.
it's really good.
Yeah.
You should go see it
I will.
when you can. But also Charlie Chaplin. That immediately made me think of Charlie Chaplin because that's basic, and Buster Keaton, like any of those people that like.
Yeah, I think he was very influenced by those kind of actors. Definitely. Yeah, I love how I was prepared watching it again to be shocked by sexist jokes, and I wasn't. I was kind of happily surprised that it's on the right side of that problematic in movies, even though it's 40 years old.
So we were watching it yesterday, and Adam was pulling faces, doing weird stuff. We were wondering what it was about. And after 40 minutes...
It was longer than that. It was about an hour mark, because this is a long bloody film. There's a scene where we first get introduced to the son, where in the background he has like what can only be described as like a racist mannequin. That you couldn't put that in anywhere now, right? And at that point, I'm like, hang on, every scene we've in this film, everybody is the same old white man. And then about an hour into the film, we're at the circus, and we get the first non-white face. I'm like, whoa!
Yeah, that is true. That is very true.
I was like, for a country that, because I remember the what came out after this last year's World Cup about the fact that the majority of the French football team who won are multi-ethnic. And like for a film, I'm like in a film in the 70s, it's like there's no black people in this.
Well,
but every single industry is kind of does that.
France is a very diverse population, definitely, and I think our football team is actually the best poster for that, because they are a lot closer to reality than most of our movies even still today. I think we have there's the same problematic in Scotland, where you feel like you you only meet white people, and it's not true. I don't know. Yeah, it's true. I never looked at that film with that filter on, trying to look for diversity, and there is none. There is none.
I don't think it was I was looking for diversity. I think the thing that shocked me to it, I'm like, everybody, it was the same amount of like, everybody is that old, well-off white guy with no hair. That's what I was seeing in every scene. I was like, I'm the same. It was just bizarre. I was like, oh, okay.
Well, we were actually mostly focused on the guy that was picked. Yeah, it was always one of those guys.
Yeah. I guess it's a point as well. I think there's the criticism of. I never realized what the last shot means, where they're all sitting at this massive Académie Française table, very rich old white man, having this luxury dinner served to them, and he opens up his starter and finds his watch in it that he's left in the factory of the terrible industrial guy. And I had never understood as a kid what that meant. I think maybe it's a point as well to have that many. They're criticizing the high classes in France in the 70s, and it's all white man.
Yeah, something. Yeah, I also actually realized that last scene, and you see new stuff every time. The huge Tricatel photo in the factory.
That's brilliant. I mean, you saw that immediately, didn't you?
A James Bond villain.
Yeah,
James Bond. It was a James Bond layer.
He even had the hands together.
Yes.
I'd given up by that point, though. I was trying to work out this morning when I gave up with this movie, because there was definitely a point. I'm like,
that's do you know what?
As in the sense, I think I had 3 stages. I had the beginning, like, okay, let's give this a go, right? And then there's the phase of like, what the hell's going on? And then there's the phase of like, I'm just here because I need to review this. You know, like I don't think I would have finished it if we weren't talking about it in that sense. I can't work out where it was. I think when I begin to lose faith is when they start the espionage shit. Like when they start tailing the mole. I'm like, wait, what? This is meant to be. I thought this was about a father-son food relationship, but I don't know. At that point, I'm like, okay, this is going in a weird place, but. I think that's when I begin to go, all right, maybe what is this?
Well, I think you made a good point where you have to see it as sketches. And I think I might have enjoyed the film a bit more if I didn't see it as a film. Like there were scenes, and if you put them together, they were amazing and so clever and so well done. And the color scheme, and the physicality of the actors, and also just like the dubbed version. I obviously want to see, but what's nice is that it sounds so good in French, just because of the way that French is. It's quite a well-rounded, like in your mouth language, and so the physicality of it is connected to the language. So it was nice to see that. So I think I want to watch this film again and see it as separate scenes, and you might enjoy that film more.
He will be in Berlin at just like me.
Yeah, I'll be at work. Yeah, I'll be delivering on that day.
Yeah, when we do a musical month, I'll be away in Morocco again or something.
Oh
No, but I think I'm realizing that maybe to introduce anyone to that actor, you probably have to start with something much earlier in his career, where he's a bit less unapologetic about doing what he does, because this movie is so that they're so happy to have. I mean, he's so free because he's who he is, and the movie's going to work when they're doing it. They know, and they're only paying him to be as big as he possibly can. So I think maybe starting. It's a very strange moment in French cinema, the way they act. Nobody acts like that anymore. It's giant, it's big, it's men having very deep voices and doing that. And it's really fun to see now, for a French person at least. But I think it's a bubble in time in France where actors were asked to be like that. And maybe to go 15 years earlier in his career might be an easier start to that side of French humor, I guess.
I think that the real thing that annoyed you, Adam, because there was a show don't tell moment that what was reversed was a tell don't show. We never got to see the cubic eggs and the featherless chickens.
yes.
Well, I didn't like the
me every
beginning
time.
with the whole the exposition. I hate when movies do that. I hate when it's like, oh, this is the biggest thing in the world, and he's been doing this for 15 years. I'm like, I don't care. I've just tuned into this movie. You're not going to convince me about this in your first opening scene.
Well, that's quite old school, I think.
Yeah, I
I
agree
think
with that.
quite a lot of older films did that. They had like an introduction, and so that would be just showing how young you are.
Yeah, it's not clearly the nostalgic factor, because I also have a major gripe with exposition. And
we were talking about that nostalgia factor of, if you're just coming to a film, you know, in your 20s, 30s, 40s, it's tough to not have been brought up with it, and then you see things really differently, not including the whole cultural differences, which just don't translate, which is a shame, because this film, I read, won awards in Germany as well. And so it might even be like a European British thing.
Yeah,
that's just
perhaps.
different.
That is possible.
I don't know. We're all familiar with the 93.7. The 93 didn't work for me. If then in essence, I should be rating this out of 93 out of 100 as 100%, because the 7% is lost to me because it's a language, right? It's the words. I'm not getting the 93% in this, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's to do with the fact that I just couldn't get into it. I don't know. I don't understand. I think
You can't do 93.7 though with every film. You have to. That has to be realism. You can't do that with Carry On films.
No, I disagree with that. I totally disagree with that, because comedy its reality is grounded in what it gives you.
No, but this isn't
Like absurd
comedic.
But absurd comedy works because they believe in the stakes of what's happening. Like, if you believe you're a chair and you're scared somebody's going to sit on you, I'm not going to watch that. Well, I don't get that 93% because I'm not a chair.
So,
Do you know what I mean? Like the performance sells you the 93%.
Yeah, no,
That's what I mean.
I understand what you mean.
So I'm going to remind everyone here, because it's not been explained, what the 93.
They did it once in
once
an episode
again,
years ago.
It's that most of the message, so 93%, is conveyed through stuff that are not language. Language is just 7%. But I will repeat here, and I salute you, Mark Westbrook. Albert Mehrabian, who is the Iranian professor who devised this thing, denounced it because it's not used how we actually used it in when we learned thing. It's specifically used for feelings, and there is a whole article about that. Well, but it's because they are pulling faces all the time here, so you can't really get any. Well, I'll share something on the 93.7, but it's been denounced by the guy who actually talked about it.
If you
created it.
But if you think in the sense of, if you're talking about lost in translation, you know when if somebody's telling you off, they don't have to say, I'm telling you off. You know by what they're doing that they're telling you off. So in the same essence here, I should get the joke, because the joke isn't the actual that isn't the language and the words, unless it's like wordplay, which is different.
Which is what this film does a lot. That's the problem.
Right, okay.
Well, yeah, it feels
That's
like
tough.
It feels like you know what they're, but it's the looks can be deceiving. Like I think there's a cultural thing. What you have slapsticks, farce. We have that kind of stuff. There is something going on right now. The BBC is starting to air a Les Miserables version.
Yes, I heard.
And reading, well, I don't have the article there, but I read it at some point, at some time. It's just hilarious. People being disgusted by the fact that there are no songs.
Yeah.
And I started to read the book here for once. That's the Pléiade version of
It exists.
Les Miserables. Yes, there was a new edition a few months ago, and basically, well, there are obviously no songs, but it's very nice because it's an account of Victor Hugo is talking about also the time he lives in. It was written in 1862, whereas the stuff happens in 1815. And the first 100 pages are about the bishop. And it's fascinating stuff that's never been shown on film, except I think with the Leno Ventura version, some parts. But the new BBC is focusing on some other stuff that's not been done before also, which is quite nice, like how Fantine became pregnant from whom and that kind of stuff.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that's where I am right now.
Well, a lot of people get confused because a lot of people think Les Mis is, the 1789. Well,
Yeah.
it's not. It's the second revolution, not the first.
Yeah, it's
As well as, it's about the aristocracy. It's like, no, it's about the implementation after all that went down.
Yeah, because
it's between two
chopped,
kings.
they chopped aristocratic heads off, and then nothing changed.
Yeah.
So it's the anger of the fact that we had a revolution. Why did nothing change?
I wonder if history is repeating itself.
Well,
We got rid of something, and now it's no different, and
know.
we're wondering
Now we want Brexit.
why do we do it?
So
Anyway.
yeah, this film is quite long, but there are actually
You're
scenes
telling me.
that are actually dragging. The suitcase mix-up scene was a bit long.
Yeah, it doesn't
what
end.
What the fuck was going on there?
I
What
love
the
it.
fuck is that scene? There are some scenes in this, and I'm like, what the fuck's going on? What the fuck's going on with the crane? Why do they need to get in a crane to get in a factory?
oh yeah.
What is that scene? And then when it opens, he's like just hanging on the sides. It's like, yeah, that wouldn't help. You're gone. You're dead.
It's
The other guy's hanging on like, shut the door. He's just like slightly pressing on the side of the crane box.
this film made Adam really angry.
I don't know why. I don't know why it made me angry.
I-
I don't know.
No, but it's awesome because I was reading about I was talking with French people over Christmas, I think, about why the Americans, when we have a successful French film, instead of exporting our film and putting subtitles on or dubbing it, there are American versions, and American studios remake the film right away in the same year, and we're like, but it was a good film as it was, and I understand better now that it's just the same with Victor Hugo's Les Miserables. Maybe that's the same problem. I refused for a very long time to watch any musical because I was like, you forget that it's something else. It's not a musical. I think there might be a wall and that we are not managing to breach at all between French, the way the French present their culture and the way the Brits and the Americans respond to it, perhaps. So I get it. That anger responds to my question: why did we never export these films? They don't work probably here.
We talked about that in the last episode, actually, about
in some episode at the beginning of the year, because this episode will probably be out in May. So,
all right, fair enough. Well, we talked in What We Do in the Shadows about different versions and why they were done. Because I remember there was a film, I think it was 2 years ago, the Valerian thing, right? Which is a French comic.
Luc Besson. No, what? No.
Comic
writer.
The I don't know what it is. It had
comics. Yeah.
Had Rihanna in it. It was like it's a science fiction thing. It was a massive success in France. Like the actual thing was.
Well, Luc Besson. The thing is, plenty of stuff are financed publicly, and he knew that he had all his money back before the money was out. Luc Besson.
All right. Okay.
So it worked.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a shame, because if they'd exported a lot more films, European films, into Britain and America, we might have understood the films more.
Well, The Upside is about to be released, which is a remake of the
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember the French title now that I hear it in English. I hate it. Something like Redoutable, something that sounds like that.
Yeah, indeed. Okay.
You'll find it.
Yeah.
I think while Yann looks for that, I think the thing that annoyed me about this film is, I know we've mentioned that it's like sketches, but sketches usually serve the plot or the world that you're in. Like if you look at, let's say, Life of Brian, like there are sketches in there that don't serve the overall purpose. Like for example, the whole sketch while there's like loads of different preachers, or even the bit when it's the start of the film when Jesus is given the ceremony, and then they're having an argument at the back because they can't hear it because somebody keeps talking over and it's mistranslated. Like that's a sketch, but it serves the overall narrative and the world to get you into it. Where in this film, any of the like slapstick sketches don't serve the overall plot at all.
Yeah.
Like the bedroom scene, like the crane, like the car chase.
I think it does, though. It's just a way that, again, it just hasn't translated well, and we're trying to overanalyze it. And I think if maybe maybe not, but if we knew more about French cinema, we would understand that there's a certain way of watching certain films from different places.
So do you think, I mean, because you were talking in the episode that came out on the 12th, I think, about the 400 blows. Is that the type of French cinema you've encountered before, that type of French cinema?
I think I don't know if I'm specific with French. I think I've always just kind of looked at European cinema. Maybe that's where I'm getting mixed up, where I'm like, I have this idea of what European is, like Victoria, for example. Like I'm looking at something like that and going, right, that's what can be brought out. And then I'm obviously looking at something that's a completely different genre at all. But I'm just not used to it, I guess.
No, I get it. Cause
I mean, I wonder if Yann had told me it's like, this is like our version of Carry On, would that have changed the way I look at this?
Perhaps.
And perhaps, but I don't know.
I think it might be much easier to translate or accept a serious or, more maybe language-based movie than that very specific type of humor and physicality. My flatmate talked about that film told me about that remake a couple of days ago, and I still couldn't remember the original name then, and I haven't checked because I forget things. I move on, and then you bring it back.
Yeah, but I'm not giving the title just yet, but it was released now 8 years ago.
8.
So it's not like it's the same year or 2 years.
Yeah, that's
so that French original.
But I feel like they started talking about an American version right away. Like, it was so successful.
So 2011 was this movie called Intouchable.
Ah, damn it. Of course, Intouchable.
Yeah, but I believe there is also this when it's well done, like we talked, what we do in the shadows. There is no point in doing a French version like with French actors, because how it was done with Alexandre Astier and the rest of the group was quite interesting and nice. And we don't really, do we remake stuff from? No, I don't think we do actually at all.
The other way around, you mean?
Yeah, the other way around. But I know that the Americans, they maybe because are they lazy? They don't like to read or to have dubbing. I don't know. But obviously, if the story is there and they know that with named and big actors, they will get a massive return on investment, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
It's a business, sadly.
And I mean, for that movie specifically, Intouchable, which is about a man in a wheelchair and his carer, it's a story that's regarded. I mean, that their the story runs around their relationship and with a lot of humor. But I think it's a subject that's really interesting to approach in a movie today, because I feel that it's one of the big fights that nobody's addressing. You know, accessibility to wheelchairs everywhere, or to for kids in school with a disability. So I'm really happy that the Americans are making their own version of that movie that will probably sell a lot of tickets, because that will educate a lot of people on that issue. It's just sad for the original movie itself, I think.
Mm-hmm. It's like the people forget that there was an original, which should also be pushed into the media rather than it being like, oh, this is a new film. Mm-hmm. And then people say, oh yeah, I really like that film. And it's like, but there was an original. Like, you can't forget where things come from, because then you start thinking that those directors and cinematographers, etc., are the people that started this whole thing. Whereas there's a whole inspiration thing, or even not even an original idea that they took from someone else. Especially when it's taken from another culture, it kind of becomes a bit more slightly political and a bit.
Absolutely. Would it take away some sort of value to say, I don't know, it's a really open question. I don't know what I would do in that situation, but would it take away some credit or value to say, this is my version of this that already exists? Like if as a producer or an actor, if you were putting on a show saying, this is my version of someone else's show, this is the show I'm using as my major inspiration, would that to your audience mean that you don't have original ideas, or would it mean anything wrong?
Probably not. No,
I don't think that takes away from anything. I think it's quite brave to take something that's already been done.
Well, look at remixes in music.
Yeah,
remixes are not looked down upon.
Well, I mean, there's a whole culture now because, of course, DJing became such a huge thing. Mm. So it became music became about remixing, right?
In that style, yes.
It depends if the people redoing it, well, more than actually having stars to actually know what they're doing. I said in What We Do in the Shadows, I'm not hopeful for the US version of as a TV series, but it's the Jermaine Clement and Taika Waititi actually, I realize, are also helming this. So I'm a bit more hopeful now, but I don't know. By the way, this episode is released. We should have a view on that series. A question for the non-French people in the room right now. Did you guys ever hear about the Académie Française before?
Yes, but not. But I'd heard of it in terms of a name, but not what it really means.
Okay, so to try to find out if you have the same kind of thing. So I talked about the Pléiade collection before, which is a kind of legendary collection from Gallimard, where all the authors, they try to get their books while they were still alive, and it only happened 4 times. There is also the Academy, the French Academy, which is, there are 40 immortal people there. Well, that's how they're called, because they're actually like revolving. They're not really islanders, Conor McLeod kind of people. No, and the main thing that they're doing right now, they're responsible. I was for many years for using their dictionary. It was a bit obtuse, like, no, this word doesn't exist. Just shut. But now a bit more opened because I'm not an asshole anymore. I think that's the 9th edition of the French Academy Dictionary we are in now. It takes them around 20 or 40 years because they have like weekly reunions and they focus on one word, and it takes ages basically. Is the language shaped by some old white dudes in your country also? Even though there were some female, quite a lot of them actually. But
maybe you've got the Oxford English, like those dictionaries. There are words that are added in there, like the word selfie is in there.
Is
like there is adaptations to that, but I don't know enough about that to know if it's like a committee. I imagine it is.
Because we can see in this film when they are at there is like people looking like it was like in the times of Louis XVI or with the perukes and the weird wigs and stuff. I'm pretty sure that's how it still is today.
Yeah, that scene made me so weirdly uncomfortable because I knew it was coming. I mean, I have seen this movie many times, but I was still so uncomfortable. The wording is something like, we are honoring this man for his contribution in preserving French culture or something, and French gastronomy, and it made me so, yeah, it's such a bubble that it's both what I love about French culture and hate. It takes itself extremely seriously. It hits its standards and its past, and it's quite hard to shift anything in French culture without having people walking in the streets, quite literally. I mean, politics is something completely different, but in French, like, that's why I didn't want to work in France for the most part, and why I moved to Glasgow instead, because the French film industry, for example, is still making films like they're in the 80s, instead of moving on with the way they do it on set, what they talk about, how they talk about it, how they write it. And that scene is, I'm pretty sure, quite accurate about how the French high class sees its culture still today.
But preservation rather than progression.
Exactly.
Because I read that people are really angry about the Louvre pyramid because it's like modern.
Yeah.
And I think that definitely kind of, it connects to your point.
Absolutely.
Because it's so beautiful. So it's like, how could you be angry at that? But
yeah, it's changed. Like, I'm pretty sure the Sydney Opera was like, what's this thing disfiguring our city? And every time. But yeah, there's still some huge resentment about the pyramid, and it has nothing to do with the fact that the guy was Japanese. It's just
in the place. It's funny. I mean, it's funny. It's not funny, but people get equally angry towards painting on the Arc de Triomphe during the manifestations in France recently. People got extremely angry because there had been some writing on that beautiful monument during one march, and they had not been that angry about the 9 people who were dead by that point, and in the 2 months of So it's weird. It's a weird pride that I guess gives a standard, but holds a lot of progress back. It's strange.
We talked, Anouk did some panto last year.
I did.
And we were wondering, always in trying to understand those differences between French and British culture. We don't have panto at all, or at least not in that same way. But looking at this, I realized, actually went to kind of a boot camp, circus a lot. I don't know if the circus scene is in any way prominent, or do you have any circus kind of stuff in the UK?
Not anymore.
Not anymore. It used to be huge, but I think people, it's like zoos. People think of it as cruel, and almost like there's the whole culture of circus people being ostracized because they're too different, and they are also very secretive, and they don't want to be part of your community. So it's almost like how travelers keep themselves separate. It's the same that circus people keep themselves separate. Yeah. And so that probably estranged everyone from it becoming like a mainstream thing.
They're starting to remove animals from all our circuses, actually.
Well, the only circus you get in Britain that anyone would go and see is Cirque du Soleil, which isn't British. So,
Which is exactly,
so there you go. That's the extent of the circus. And
Not that much a circus, actually.
No,
more
exactly.
a performance, yeah.
So, but I think that's why people find circuses, it's like a connection between animal cruelty as well.
Yeah.
So people, it stopped becoming like this huge thing.
I mean, it could go back to a lot. I mean, you know, physical performances from humans and people who choose to be here, and that would be fine, like, for me personally, for example. But I think even to the performers there, probably the work conditions are not brilliant either. So it's always a hard line to toe.
We got anything else about the movie?
I actually have a few additional things to say. There was. It's not been done that much on film, definitely in cartoon with Asterix. But when the truck is getting out of the Tricatel factory via the wall, which happens a lot in Asterix when Obelix they are escaping from the prison cells.
Yeah, I love those type of. This is such a violent. I mean, set-wise, I assume movie, because things keep on bumping into each other. People falling from things, on things, towards things. I was very mindful of seeing that older actor who had just suffered 2 strokes on that set where things keep falling. It must have been a very stressful shoot, I assume, for them.
Mm-hmm.
There is a TV show which is part of the plot at some point, Tous les coups sont permis, which was translated as No Holds Barred, I think, in the subtitles. This show is presented by a gentleman called Philippe Bouvard, who is another legend, but not of stage or screen, but radio. And one of the tiny regrets in my life is because he used to do daily, so that's daily, a show called Les Grosses Têtes. So he would invite 7 people, like artists and his friends, and one guest, and they would get questions from the audience and answer them in a funny and creative way, kind of stuff. And you could win money if your question was picked. My regret is my dad is a fan of him. The guy's still alive. He's like 80 something, but he was ousted. He was ousted a long time ago. 4 years ago, and his nemesis replaced him, which is quite annoying. And for a guy his age, it was, I think, like 70 something at the time. I went to attend 2 recording sessions. So it's basically, the show is 1 hour and a half. Not included the ads when it's played on the radio, but he's doing 2 recordings in a row, so that's 3 hours. Mm-hmm. And there are no pickups. Everything is done like if it was a conversation. I was like, wow, that guy is almost 80. He's doing every day 3 hours in a row with like a 5-minute break between 2 shows. Mm-hmm. Like that's impressive. And now it's been replaced by his nemesis, as I just explained. Though I can't invite my father to attend to one of those, which is quite sad. That's done, yeah. Yeah. Another thing I had.
I do think that. Sorry.
Yeah, is that?
I do think that the way that they showed assembly line, food process stuff was really good. Mm-hmm. I think it's probably one of the best ways of showing factory farming / McDonald's style making of food. Interestingly, talking about cultural differences, there is a point about how this film is talking about the differences between American food and French food, and how French haute cuisine is kind of losing its status in the world because of canned goods, and McDonald's, etc. chain restaurants are seen as fine dining now, rather than it being about fine dining being fine dining. And it's very different from being chain. And so I think that's a really interesting point, because I think we are dealing with that, especially now, because every single high street, the only people that can afford the rent are chain restaurants, and everyone else is being like bought up, or they are only there for a few months and then they have to leave because they can't afford it. And so it just shows this whole assembly line way of making food is like taken over the world, literally.
If you look at how chicken McNuggets are done, that's pretty much how it is
Like,
done.
I thought it was so and also the spray painting the fish and the chicken, I thought it was just done really well.
And that's in 1976. That's my biggest problem, is like, this is still incredibly relevant to how we make food today. And that's scary, you know.
Even more relevant.
Yeah.
Scarily, yeah.
So I am pleased to inform you that we are bringing back the I didn't ken that section now.
I didn't ken that.
Yeah, French edition. So what do you think, guys? Because I saw you have a weird look when we were watching it, and especially with the subtitles, it does not mean takeout. What do you think prêt à manger means?
Quick eating? No?
The subtitles
Bite?
were saying takeout, but I think it's a play on words with the fact in fashion we have prêt-à-porter. It's probably why they took also that name for the chain here, the restaurant chain. But it's like ready to eat,
Yeah,
pretty
ready
much.
to eat, I would say that.
Yeah.
Oh, ready to eat.
Ready
I
to
see.
eat.
I didn't ken that. There you go.
And now you can that.
It's a great segment.
Do you have because I only got this word, but do you have some words to propose in the pool of I didn't ken that thing?
Damn. Okay, wow, okay. Brain. Are we staying in food? Are we not staying in
Anything.
food?
And salts. We've talked about enculé quite a few times.
Oh, that's such a good word. One of my favorite word that I used when I arrived here, because it means something completely different in French, is pouf. In French, it's not offensive, not as offensive as it is here. How would you translate poufiesse? In poufiesse. How would you translate that to English? Because I need to find a word that I can use that is not the level of what poof is in English. It's just it's a girl, I don't know, she's annoying. We don't like her too much, but we don't mind her really. And she's very superficial, but then again, sometimes you'll have a laugh. Une poufiesse.
Huh. That's funny. Yeah, because of course, so a footstool is a poof, and a derogatory way of calling a homosexual is a puff.
And how do you spell it? Is it the POOF?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I think a poof is POUFFE.
Okay. We have a poof with double FE. That is some kind. It's
Not a footstool, but a
it's
weird
a chair.
round.
You know, like the chairs, the bin. No, the little bowls in the chair.
Styrofoam bowls.
How's it called?
Oh, like
kind
a beanbag.
Yeah, kind
Is
of.
that
But
how
you
it's
sit-
called? Yeah, the ones you sit on and they kind of swallow you.
Yeah,
and,
beanbag.
and you can
Beanbag.
never get
Beanbag.
back up again.
Oh, is that what that is?
That's what that is. And all versions of those things, you know, tiny chairs with no backs would be a poof.
It's funny.
Ah.
In this film, there's a bit where they go down the stairs when he's pretending to be the American tourist that says privy, and a privy is also a toilet
Oh,
here.
okay.
Yeah, but in
going to the-
old.
In a really old sense.
That's
yeah,
funny.
The privy.
Yeah.
Vélo. What's a vélo?
A
A
bike.
bike?
Nice.
A velodrome.
GCSE French.
I mean, there's a big, massive bike over there, yeah. I mean, I know what velo is. I did also do French, but I didn't do very well in it. So,
Yeah, French GCSE at least.
what do you do in the weekend?
Yeah.
Velo.
Évêque.
With.
Évêque.
Évêque.
Oh no, that's avec.
I don't know.
Évêque.
L'évêque de Digne qui accueille Jean Valjean.
Come again?
The
Bless you.
the bienvenue Myriel who welcomes Jean Valjean with the candlesticks.
It's that order of things.
Yeah, it's because in the book it doesn't happen. It happens in the book that is I thought you were just a priest, and he's no, well, not him because the guy is so humble and stuff, but the gendarme downstairs like, oh no, he's not a priest, he's the bishop. That's when it's entirely different.
Oh.
It's also the android in Aliens, but that's totally unrelated. I think, actually, we can... are we good on... didn't I can that?
I think we are. I think you've told me some new facts, Ken.
Okay. I think... we'll go into fringe stuff and plugging, if there is any, after the rating.
So we rate movies on good, bad, or just plain standard. Just plain standard, like it didn't even try. It's terrible.
Okay.
Shouldn't exist.
We know what you think.
No, but you'll be surprised. So with that in mind, was this film good, bad, or just plain standard? Starting with our guest.
Wait 1 second. We also have The Vault, and we have Legendary and Masterpiece, and a few of those, which is defined in something I wanted to print for you, but I forgot.
Do you have something that correspond? What would correspond to? To me, it's a good film, but if anything, it's cult. It's deeply anchored in my personal culture.
That's a Vault then, probably.
Vault.
That's a personal movie to you then.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would say that.
Cool. Yann?
Well, actually, I put that in my guilty pleasure. Because which we haven't talked about yet as a category, but because I can't really recommend it to anyone, and actually watching it twice in 2 weeks, I was like, yeah, that's a bit too much watching it twice. So guilty pleasure, when you watch it too close together, you get a bit it gives you no, that's a bit too much.
You've eaten too much, definitely. Yeah.
Anouk?
I'm going to say enjoyable.
That's not a category.
So I'm going to say good, with like a flair of enjoyable, but problematic. The plot was problematic for me, but if I see it as different sketches, it was awesome.
Problematic in the grammatical sense, not in the P word kind of sense. Oh, this is problematic.
Yeah.
With problems.
With problems.
Yeah. I had to debate with myself if this is the worst thing I've watched for this podcast.
Abysmal, you said, I think.
Well, when I was having that debate, I'm like, is this worse than Ghostbusters 2016?
Oh my god!
But that isn't a film.
Oh my god!
But to me, that isn't a film. That's a product. You know. So in my eyes, the 2016's Ghostbusters is not a movie. So that kind of makes the decision easier. This is the worst thing I've seen. But having said that, I feel that I've been unfair because I didn't know it was a carry-on style movie. If I had had that prior knowledge, would that affect the way I look at this film? Probably. I wouldn't hate it as much.
I think you came in.
I think I came in annoyed because we weren't watching 400 blokes.
Guns
Instead, I got this, whatever the hell this film is.
I feel I will take that. I will take that. I gave you the worst film you've ever seen, and I'm pretty sure it's not the first film you've seen in your life. So I'm quite proud.
I don't actually think this is the worst film I've ever seen. I think for the episodes we've done on the podcast, this is pretty bad.
Worse than Saw 7?
Worse than Saw 7? Oh, that's a question.
Come on.
No, because, well, yeah, maybe.
No.
Because Saw 7 and that are bad, and they're terrible. And as we said, we couldn't rate... We said in that series, you can't rate 5, 7, and... Yeah, 5, 7, and 4... without the rest of the series. They're unwatchable. This isn't unwatchable, but it is bad.
Okay.
At
least it's not unwatchable.
This is bad, but maybe if you come into this with the eyes of its carry on, it might be good. But I can't recommend this. I will never watch this film again.
Yeah, I didn't do a good job in selling it to you.
Yeah. I would take this back. If I bought this.
Blockbuster.
The Blockbuster, this
Did you?
take it back. I can't decide whether it's bad or unrateable.
Aww.
Because I don't think I watched it with the right mindset. I don't think I was fair.
Oh dear.
So I'm in between that.
Okay.
You know what?
But you'll never see it again, so we'll never know.
I mean, never say
This
never.
is bad. Nah, this is a bad movie. This is bad. This is a bad one for me.
And also there's the factor that obviously you won't get everything
No, of course.
because it's not in your language.
Yeah.
That doesn't help.
It doesn't help, no, but...
Like, I was biased against Nosferatu. I tried to watch it a few times before I actually watched it for the episode.
That's true.
And yeah, but
Yes, that's a tough film as well, because that's like, again, a cult.
I just feel there's
ingrained.
too many flaws to be unrateable. Because unrateable, it's not a movie, it's just abysmal. This is a movie, but there's so many bits that are just not a movie. It's just bad.
All right.
Sorry.
okay. We were
Adam.
Anouk.
Yann and
Cecile.
bye-bye.
Bye.